Now it's time for another debate, the editor's opinion, challenges of library and information science journals. And I am happy to introduce Professors Dr. Candela Ollé and Dr. Alexandra López-Borrull from the Faculty of Information and Communication Science of the Open University of Catalonia, UOC, and our Dean, Professor Dr. Ernest Abadal. When you will. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Luis, for your kind presentation. Thank you, all of you, for being here. And thank you, the organization, for having invited to do this introduction to journals. Yesterday, we were speaking about education. Today, we have been speaking about research. And we had to speak about still the main tool for communicate science, journals. So this is what we are going to do. Cristobal asked us before to collaborate. We will do a collaborative presentation between Candela and me. So this is something that we are doing. We are from two university in a collaborative research. We wanted to speak about journals as an introduction for the roundtable that would be after that. You all know many of the things. There are several challenges that are threatening academic journals. We have spoken before about open access. Open access is not just a movement, activism, we have been speaking about business models. There is also the search for a new model. Journals will go on always being this same way, Almetrics, social media, and so on. We are always speaking about peer review, always. Since the beginning of peer review, we have been speaking if it was a good process for science. And specialization is also one of the topics that we usually think that can be a threat for journals. We did some bibliographic research to see some studies related with the idea that we wanted to have here with Ernest and Candela, and we saw that there are some studies on some parts or some topics in LIS journals, specialization, rankings of journals, or impact. About impact in journals, this paper from Abadal. We wanted to do a survey. We have been speaking about surveys. We wanted to do surveys on editors. We thought that it would be people really expert to know some challenges and trends for the future. There are two papers to research. One of them of 2005, which is focused on the 48 German LIS journals, and this other paper from Baladron, which is more focused on Spanish communication journals and use the Delphi methodology. So our presentation will have two different parts. My part will be a basic description of journals, which some of the data collected by us and some of the data proceeds from Web of Science or in Scopus, and then Candela will do the current situation and forecast in the work about the survey. Yesterday we were speaking about our discipline. Which is really our disciplines? Which are the borders, the limits? I think that, of course, we have the same problem considering LIS journals. We wanted a bigger family than Cristobal uses in his research, so we consider all of the journals in Scopus using the same code, the classification code, but we wanted to merge with the Web of Science category. Not all journals are in both classifications, so we wanted a bigger family of journals to work with. The resulting domain was refined, as some of the journals we consider in this kind of works you have to make some decisions, and we decided that some journals were really communication or were things about terminology and were excluded of our domain. So, if there are 956 LIS journals in Ulrich Periodicals directory, and there are 81 LIS journals in Web of Science, we consider the 211 LIS journals that they are in Scopus, and some of them covered by Web of Science in other classifications in Scopus. So with these 211 was our domain of journals that we work with. The first that we wanted to see is which was the publisher, the country publisher of these journals. Of course, we consider data from Scopus. You know that it's not always the same, but what they consider that it was the country, we consider it was the country. We can see in this pie chart that a third of journals have a publisher from the United States, more or less a quarter have a publisher from the United Kingdom, and there is 1/3 that have journals with a publisher in elsewhere in the world. This elsewhere in the world, if you have this other pie chart, you can see that there are 24 other countries that have journals published in them. So there is 26 countries that publishes these 211 journals, and there is countries from all the continents. Instead of considering just a country, in terms of geopolitical point of view, we wanted to see some other classification. We have seen that 3/4 of journals have a publisher in the G7 countries. G7 meaning, Canada, France, Germany, Japan, United Kingdom, United States, and Germany. Other disciplines are growing journals published in the BRIC countries, meaning Brazil, Russia, India, China, and sometimes South Africa is included in this classification. We have seen that just 7 journals in our discipline are published in these countries. And there is, of course, 20% of other journals elsewhere in the world. If we consider the sort of publisher from the information provided by Scopus, we did 3 different classifications. If there was an association or a society, a university, or a company. We have seen that 2/3 of these journals have a company as publisher, that there are still 20% of journals with a publisher which is or association or a society, and there are still, still 33 journals which have a university as publisher. Another consideration or another parameter we can consider about journals was if they are printed or digital version. We have seen that 80% of them are still printed in both versions, printed and digital. From the 44 journals that they are only in digital version, the main part of them are new in the last 15 or 20 years, but we know that there are some journals that are changing to only digital version, like Profesional de la Información. What about language? Language is important, and we wanted to know in which journals language was the most usual. We have seen that 185 journals are published just in English. Remember, 3/4 of journals having United States and United Kingdom, so it's easy, but there are more journals that are exclusively published in English, and there are 26 which have other options. These other options, we have seen that it has some language like Portuguese, German, French, and Spanish, and there are 12 of them which can be considered multilingual. It means, for instance, BIT, the journal from the University of Barcelona, and now from my university, which have multilingual, meaning that it publishes Catalan, Spanish, Brazilian, French, English, whatever. I have to say that many of the journals that are categorized in Spanish, French, German, and Portuguese also beginning to publish every time more articles in English, but it's not the most usual or what it's their policy or in the whole journal. Open access, we were speaking about it. We have to say that there we considered journals that were full open access and journals that were not full open access. We know that there is something gray inside hybrid journals and these kind of things, but as we consider that there is a transition, or could be considered a transition from one to the other, we wanted to know which were in one left and one in the other. And only 23 of these journals, remember, it's not, there is a selective criteria, those indexed by Scopus and Web of Science are not, or just these 23 journals are full open access. And the last data from this panoramic view that we wanted to show before Candela begins with the survey, it was when these journals were created. Sometimes we speak about future, but there is also important to see from where we are coming. And we have seen that just few journals were created in the 19th century, like Notes and Queries and Library Journal, and the main part of these journals were created in the 20th century. In fact, in the last 20 years, 64 of these 211 journals were created. You can see there is a peak in 2005, really important, on 28 journals where these 211 journals were created. So really, you can, if we consider that in these 300 years of journals, 200 it's just before, there are a lot of new journals published or created in this part. So these were the data that we wanted to show about journals. Candela, whenever you want.
Thank you, Alex. We continue with objectives and methodology. The main aim of our study is to know editors' opinion about current situation and future trends in LIS academic journals. Here you have the specific objectives that we propose, and also these 5 blocks are related to the blocks that we organize the questions of the survey. Our survey was addressed to editors and directors in order to obtain one response of each journal. Was disseminated by email and also web form from December 2014 to April 2015. And at the moment, because we also want to say that this is a work in progress also, as Professor Urbano commented this morning, that at the moment we obtain a total of 36 responses, that means around 15%. Moving on to results that are grouped, as I commented, in these 5 blocks: economic aspects, peer review procedures, functionalities, topics-specialization, and the last, future forecast. We want to point out that some of the editors and directors did not answer all the questions that we did, even though they were told that the information will be treated confidentially. This is just to explain you that this is the reason that some of the results did not total 36. We will start with economic aspects. There is a large group with more than 60% of answers with a budget of less than $10,000, as you can see in the bar chart. More than 20% are within the range of $10,000 to $25,000, and less than 20% have a budget that is more than $25,000. In terms of budget, we ask about the kind of funding that the journals receive. Institutional support, as you can see, more than 40%, red color, and also subscription that reach almost 35%, are the main percentages of the answers. In this block, we ask for opinions and reasons for open access, as the information provided by Scopus and Web of Knowledge only indicates whether they are in the directory of open access journals. Of the 36 responses received, 17 are open access and 15 are not. You can see in this bar chart also. Whether the answer was yes or not, we ask for the reasons, but at the moment we don't have the results analyzed yet. In order to conclude the economic block, the first block of the survey, the short-term prediction indicates that open access will become the majority model for scholarly journals. As you can see, yes was 64% of the answers. More specifically, the opinion of editors or directors is that open access journals follow a funding model of institutional support. You can see also in the second table of the slide. The review process and all it entails were one of the sections of the questionnaire. The following figure, this pie chart, is used to show you the volume of journals responding that need an average of 1 to 2 months to review the text. The number of journals that need less than a month for a peer review is also relevant. We were interested also in the measures to compensate reviewers. Here you have, with 43%, name list publicly, and the second position, 33%, accreditation or certificate. And then there is the category other that you can see in the following slides that has a significant percentage of responses, but as I commented you before, we are analyzing at the moment. On the other hand, the table below shows you the problems arising before or during the review process. We found that many of the journals are struggling to find reviewers, and also they found problems with the time frame, and also guarantee of blind reviews, for instance. The percentage of rejection rate is quite balanced, as you can see in the right side, according to the responses. The table that shows you the rejection rate, you can see that low quality and methodological or formal errors are in the top positions of the answers. In relation to the format, the dominance of electronic journal access allows for value-added services, Altmetrics, research data, and social media. So we will focus now in these topics. The most common value-added service, as you can see, is ability to search from certain fields, followed by other. Again, it repeats the same. We have an average of possibilities. With regard to other versions, more than 70% of journals do not have mobile phone functionalities. Although social media is important, around 36% of journals do not use it. Twitter and blogs are the most common used tools, followed by Facebook. In terms of how editors, directors would rate the presence of journal in the social network, the largest group of responses are average, with 47%, followed by bad, with 25%, and unfortunately, very good and good are not well-positioned results. We link from social media to Altmetrics. Around 20% provide Altmetrics, whose advantages are, for instance, information for authors and readers, with 43%, transparency with 24%, quality monitoring 21% of the answers that we obtain. As you can see in this pie chart, over 86% have no data policy. Therefore, 12 of 36 answers do not accept additional materials. Moreover, the kind of additional material accepted or that will be accepted are datasets with 31%, audiovisual material, other materials, and there is also a big percentage that don't have it. Interdisciplinarity is reflected in the classification of the journals in one or more categories. For this reason, we ask about the current focus, where librarianship, information science, and both categories together, LIS, make up 3/4 of the total. Librarianship information science and LIS together are the focus, as I commented, but the acceptance of related disciplines such as communication and management is expected. Following with the 5 block of results, one of the main contributions of our study is the future forecast made by experts with their assessment of changes in the next 5 or 10 years. First of all, we will present some general tendencies, and later we will show you which areas editors and publishers expect more or fewer changes. Here, at this slide, we want to show you a couple of questions of the survey that we did. The first one, do you think the future content distribution will focus on article or issue? The predominance of article is a fact, 81%. At the second example of question done, do you think that journals in general will evolve towards the mega journal model? As Reme Melero commented before, she needs information about it or ask for it. Also, there is a clear difference between yes and no at this time is the winner. The third question that I give you as example, what are the main threats facing journals? Here we can see that more than 50% of answers are funding, followed by others again, and in the third position, pressure of quartiles and impact factors. In order to conclude the survey, we ask a question based on a scale from 1 to 10, the opinion of editors and directors, in what areas will journals see the greatest changes over the next 5-10 years? Here you have the data, presented from the most changeable to the least. At the top position we have metrics with 6.78, followed by data 6.18. At the bottom we found founding and peer review. Until here, I present the results, and I will take the last minutes to summarize some of the conclusions. In relation to impact of open access, we conclude that budgets are reduced and the importance of institutional support and subscriptions is confirmed. A shift to an open access model is expected. The second block, social media, mobile phone, and all metrics have yet to be exploited. There is a lack of data policy, and consequently, there are a few available additional materials in most journals. The majority of editors consider that the distribution will focus on article rather than on an issue. Funding is considered the main threat. According to the answers, most of the journals have peer review time of less than 2 months. Lack of reviewers is considered the main problem. Librarianship, information science, and LIS together are the focus, but most editors will probably expand to related disciplines such as management and communication. And the last one, conclusion, is that metrics and data are the challenges for the next 5-10 years. Thank you very much for your attention.